Alright, there's two teams in the NBA in this offseason that pretty much were somewhat of bottom feeders, and they had a good young potential, but they needed, those extra couple moves to get them over the hump. And the two teams we're going to be addressing today are the Phoenix Suns and the Atlanta Hawks. Both teams did not make the playoffs last season, let alone for a couple of seasons and years. They do have a young, good direction of Devin Booker on the Phoenix Suns side, and then franchise young star with the Atlanta Hawks, Mr. Trae Young. So, two young directions. They've been trying to form different role players to fit alongside these guys, but this was the offseason that these were the two top teams that were bottom feeders that will be making the NBA playoffs next season. Most likely, though. Most likely. So, first thing we'll be covering is going to be for the Phoenix Suns. Now, the Phoenix Suns last season, no one really expected them to make the playoffs. They were kind of in that weird position of there's really no growth or potential, but the surrounding role players. They did pick up Ricky Rubio last season, and he was a great young pick. That's actually a good young veteran on the team. That's a true point guard that really flourished for Devin Booker. You did have Kelly Oubre Jr., a young cat as well. Aaron Baines was a huge pick for them. Needless to say, that could spread the floor. The Suns were actually picking up that direction of finally they would have seasons from like 19 wins to 21, barely progressing anything. They're actually getting kind of worse. But now they picked up Monty Williams last season. They put a couple pieces and they won 8 straight games in the bubble. They were undefeated, but they could not make the NBA playoffs. They were pretty close, very close. But that brings Devin Booker in a good world now. There was trade rumors of him potentially wanting to leave, maybe join D'Lo and Cat in Minnesota. But the Phoenix Suns made the right moves to secure him and push him in his career to where he can finally make the playoffs. So the additions that they did bring in for the Phoenix Suns, the main trade we all know about, the Chris Paul trade. So State Farm is going to be going to Phoenix, Arizona. Expect Devin Booker to be in a couple of those commercials. I fully expect that now. But just like Ricky Rubio was a traditional point guard who can be able to be a huge impact on the team, and a floor general that would really help out Devin Booker, Chris Paul is going to be that on steroids. The backcourt's going to be amazing. You have Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Now, you are going to make it up on the defensive end as well, because you still have a young franchise player in DeAndre Ayton, which he's going to flourish and eat because of Chris Paul. When Chris Paul was playing on the Clippers with DeAndre Jordan, when he was playing on the Pelicans and / Hornets with Tyson Chandler, those bigs flourished as all-star type players. Same thing with DeAndre Ayton, which is going to be required of Chris Paul. He's going to be the good pit bull, the good push that DeAndre Ayton's going to need. And we can see him to probably be in that bubble all-star type, in that area and range. Also with the Phoenix Suns, you did pick up Jay Crowder, $30 million for 3 years, and which was a very underrated pick. He was a starting power forward in the NBA Finals. He now has a groove. He now has confidence. He's going to be a great forward on their team and franchise. And the Phoenix Suns are finally getting some good role players and vets that can really, put them in that good direction. Another one as well was Etuan Moore. I think that's a very underrated shooter and pick for them on their team. Etuan Moore will give you some good valuable minutes as a backup shooting guard from your franchise. You do have Cameron Johnson. You retain Dario Saric. I doubt Cameron Payne will get that many minutes. Javon Carter is also on the team. And another big one is Mikal Bridges, who's still on the team. He's going to have an amazing season being the small forward for the starting lineup on the next season. So kind of think of the Phoenix Suns right now. A lot of people have been saying they're top 5. Some people said they're barely going to miss the playoffs. Some people kind of range them around 6 through 8. I like them right now as around a 7th or 8th seed. I really want to see what happens more with the Warriors roster, if the Rockets are really going to implode with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. But basically from last season, who were in the playoffs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're going to be removed. Now if the Rockets blow it up, they're going to be removed. And basically from that, you have 2 open slots. So basically whoever's going to take it, we could see potentially being the Pelicans, the Warriors, the Suns. So kind of expect any of those in that scenario. But that's on the Phoenix Suns side. So their starting lineup is going to be Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. You could put Cameron Johnson as your starting power forward, but I think they'll run with Jay Crowder since he has finals experience and he is a vet. Cameron Johnson would be a great six-man off the bench on your team and franchise to give you that extra boost. Or you could put Mikal Bridges, but I think Mikal's going to start. Phoenix Suns, they made some great moves, man. These were big because basically before this offseason, I didn't know really what direction they were going, what they could have done. Initially with the Chris Paul trade, I was kind of here or there, but they hadn't made that move. There was really nothing else you could make a trade for that could really entice a direction. So, good move for them. It's going to be a good 2-year experiment with Chris Paul. Besides from that, they'll make some moves to retool. But yeah, Phoenix Suns, I expect around 7th or 8th seed. I think the highest they could go is probably 6th. I'm not going to say 5th because, I still respect the Jazz, the Nuggets, Clippers, the Lakers, Mavericks over them. So, and the Blazers now who are retooled. So we'll take it step by step. But kudos to the Phoenix Suns. Let's jump over to the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference. So we all know the East is very whack. It is weak. You do have some formidable teams, with like the Miami Heat, for example, the Bucks, the 76ers, the Raptors, the Celtics. I'm probably forgetting a team in there. The Brooklyn Nets now, who finally have Kyrie and KD. But some of these teams, they're somewhat respectable, but you also don't really see them winning the championship or not too much of a contender. So, and there's a bunch of bottom feeders. I mean, you got the Pistons, bottom feeders, the New York Knicks, the Chicago Bulls. So basically, there's always been that 7th and 8th seed, which is pretty easy to get into if you're in an East team. There's not a lot of superstars out there. I mean, you really got, in the East, you got Kyrie, you got KD, Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, Trae Young, a few any others like that. I mean, you can be a subpar player in the NBA, a subpar quote-unquote star, and you can make the All-Star game pretty simple in the Eastern Conference. So that's going to be a huge advantage for the Atlanta Hawks, as most 7th and 8th seeds, they usually have losing records. So I can actually see the Atlanta Hawks with around a 40 and 42 record, for example, if it was 82 games, get into that 7th or 8th seed. But I think they'll be hovering a little bit over 500. I think they'll probably finish around, I know it's going to be a 72-game win season, but let's just pretend if it was 82 games. I expect them to be around like 44 and 38, kind of in that mix. So basically who they did bring in for them to secure that next role and that next step, they did bring number 1, Bojan Bogdanovic. We thought the trade was going to go down to where he was going to go into the Milwaukee Bucks. That was not the case. So he became a restricted free agent. And his decision was pretty much the Hawks or the Lakers. The Hawks had more money to throw at him, the better role for a young team, and he was very needed. So I really like the move. Trae Young and Bojan Bogdanovic kind of gives me somewhat of a similar resemblance of a backcourt of the Warriors with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I'm not going to say it's exact, of course, but it resembles somewhat of that. So I really like those moves out there. They also did bring in Danilo Gallinari. He can play the 3 or 4 for your franchise. He can average around 20 a night, pretty simply on his part. So, all the offense does not have to be on the back of Trae Young anymore. He finally has some more shooters out there, confident guys who can get their own shot off. You got Bogdan, as well as you got Danilo Gallinari. Plus your front court's pretty crazy. Jason Collins. And then as well as you do have Clint Capella. Or John Collins, my bad. Then Clint Capella. Other moves for them, they brought in a backup point guard, young cat, Chris Dunn, who was on the Bulls for a couple seasons. They brought in Solomon Hill. He was on the Miami Heat. He has some veteran experience for them. I really want to see the progression of DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish for this team. They had a subpar first season, but I think with these guys, they just give them a couple more games to play with, more experience, and they're going to be a playoff team, so they're going to flourish. I also forgot as well, they brought in Tony Snell, which isn't, he's an underrated guy. He can play great defense. He's lengthy. That's something what they need in their identity. Who did else they brought in? Skal Lapsivir. I mean, he's fine. He's got some potential. But another big one was Rajon Rondo. So looks like Chris Dunn could play the 2 or a third point guard, but Rajon Rondo is going to be your backup on the bench. which again, Rondo just won a championship. He already got paid around $8 million for the Atlanta Hawks, and he's going to mentor Trae Young. So anytime Rondo's on your team, you're going to make the playoffs, of course. You're going to do very well in the playoffs. He's going to be playoff Rondo. And the Atlanta Hawks probably could win. I'm not going to say they're going to win the first round of a playoff series, but it can go down to 6 or 7 if you're going against like the Celtics or the Sixers. And that'll be very interesting. I really like the direction for the Atlanta Hawks. I like Trae Young. I think he's going to be a superstar in this game, which he's been progressing very well. But the Atlanta Hawks have made some great moves. I expect them to be in the NBA playoffs in the Eastern Conference. The Phoenix Suns, they made great moves. The West is stacked, but I think the 76ers, not 76ers, my bad. The Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul, they're going to make the playoffs. You got Chris Paul on that team, and they made some good moves. So overall, kudos to management on both of these teams and their side. I'm going to like the new direction of Devin Booker and Trae Young finally taking to another level. Let's see how they do in the playoffs. And of course, let's see how the beginning of the season goes. See if these guys mesh together and how well they can take it off.